happening. All right, so guys, when we did absorption costing, all right, we did speak a little bit about that production cost. It does include allocated fixed overheads, all right? That is when we're using the absorption costing. Then we also touched on marginal costing, where we said, production cost is only made of variable cost. All right. So under absorption costing, we had what we can call an umbrella basis to allocate the fixed cost. All right. But now ABC is also another method that we use to allocate fixed or indirect cost to the products. All right. So in today's class, we want to look at how now can we allocate our cost using the ABC technique. All right. So in terms of this, activity-based costing, all right, which is ABC, all right, is very important in regards to this. What is happening? All right. So in terms of activity-based costing, it is based on the assumption that everything these days is actually mechanized. There is less of labor cost. All right. There's more activities involved. Let's take, for example, these days there is robots. All right. I believe in some countries they're already using robots to do most of the production. All right. What does it mean? It means now the labor cost, which we were used to, is actually reduced. Now, how now do we allocate the cost that is the robots are involved in? Like, for example, remember robots work with electricity. Electricity is a fixed cost. How then now do we allocate this cost to the products that we are producing? So that is what we want to look at now with activity-based costing. All right. So activity-based costing is applicable to modern production environment where we talk about the robots. All right. And then we have what we call the ABC cost card. We're going to touch on that. And then the advantages and disadvantages of ABC. All right. So in modern production environment, all right, what is happening in modern production environment? So I want to look at the modern production environment versus the old production environment. All right. So in modern production environment, we have more machinery and computerized systems. Take, for example, you guys are accountants. All right. Back then, all right, I remember when I was still a small boy, all right, even some of you guys, I'm still remember, the accountants, they used to have ledger accounts. Sure, you've heard of them. There were books, which were more like ledger books, all right? They have those as the accountants who write down things down. But today, what do you guys do? You use accounting softwares. That's what you use, right, to prepare the financials, the Caseware, QuickBooks, um, Pastel, you name them, right? Different softwares that you use to prepare the financial statements. You see, so in modern days, we have more machinery and computerized systems. We're processing the products, right? Back then, they used to process products in small batches. But you guys agree with me that if you're using Caseware, you agree with me that you can have your trial balance, all right, which is in Excel. Then you import everything from that trial balance to the Caseware. Then you just have to map the items to the relevant account. Then actually your financials are done, all right? But back then you had to do it one by one and all that. Now, back then, people used to pick oranges by hands, lemons, apples, they would pick them by hands. But these days, what is happening? There's use of combined harvesters. They use harvesters to harvest the farmers. So which means there's less use of direct labor. All right. And then there's more of indirect overheads. What type of indirect overheads are we looking at? We're now looking at depreciation. All right. Remember, machine that we use in production, those machines are depreciated. All right. So there's more of indirect overheads, less direct labor. So in other words, there's lesser employees. And it's going to be worse as time goes on, especially if the robotics, right, the introduction of robots kick in, right, especially in the manufacturing industry, the robots are doing production. So what's going to happen to labor? People are going to be retrenched. I don't know what we'll be doing by then, right? But of course, you can see that there will be high unemployment and so forth. Right? So we have two costing systems. We have traditional costing system versus activity-based costing system. Right. Now, traditional costing system is no longer appropriate. All right. So traditional costing is no longer appropriate. Now, why is no longer appropriate? We have largest cost of production in indirect overheads. All right. And traditional costing lacks detail. So traditional costing, now it just allocates, all right, or categorize the indirect overheads together. I'm going to show you now. Because of the above, the cost cannot be controlled properly. Now, under traditional costing system, right, we said no, costs were allocated under one umbrella. What happened? We used to calculate absorption, or okay, what we can call overhead allocation rate, right, whereby we take budgeted fixed manufacturing overheads divided by, so we used to divide this with budgeted production capacity. That's what we did, right? Under absorption costing. So this is what we have as our overhead allocation rate. Now, what is happening here? Under traditional costing, it means now divisions that produces more, we have more allocated fixed cost. Why am I saying this? Remember, allocated fixed cost is equal to overhead allocation rate per unit multiplied by actual units produced. So which implies now that divisions that produce more units, we have an allocation of higher fixed cost. But now this is biased. Why? Because sometimes, all right, some divisions could involve a lot of activities, like for example, machine setting up, which require lots of energy, all right? So that's where ABC kick in and say, no, it's not fair to allocate more overheads based on the units produced. It does not necessarily mean that when you produce more, you consumed more fixed cost. Right. So we want to look at that now and see what's happening there. Now, activity-based costing kicked in. All right. So it then said using cost pools before absorbing cost into units cost drivers. All right. Cost driver is a unit of activity that consumes resources. Now, what's happening at activity-based costing? So we have activity-based allocation. So we have overhead cost. So guys, activity-based costing is about allocating indirect fixed cost. All right, those are the costs that we want to allocate to different products. That's what ABC is about. All right. So we have different activity cost pools. For example, ordering. All right, ordering and receiving of material. Ordering and receiving of material. What can drive the ordering of receiving material? We can agree now if we have costs, all right, if we have indirect cost associated with ordering and receiving of material, all right, we have cost associated with ordering and receiving of material. How are we going to allocate these costs to different products? We can agree that we can allocate based on number of purchase orders, all right, each product or each division went through. That's how we can allocate the cost. Now, if we have setting up and machine cost, so probably we incurred some cost to set up the machine, all right? Now, we want to allocate the machine setting up cost to different products. How are we going to allocate that? We can allocate those ones to different products or divisions based on number of setting up. All right? How many setups did we do per each product? Then we have machine cost. All right, machining cost. If you have cost that's involved with regards to robots, all right, machining cost. How do we allocate those costs to the different products? Remember, we spoke earlier on that sometimes we have robots that are being involved in manufacturing. Now, we want to allocate the cost or the electricity consumed by these robots. We want to allocate to different products. How are we going to allocate that? We can allocate based on the number of machine hours spent within each product. All right, I'm going to show you soon. And then we have assembly cost, all right, the cost to assemble the machines. How are we going to allocate the assembling cost to the different products? We can use a number of parts, all right, that we have in regards to this, or the assembling hours, all right, depends on what they gave us in this scenario. Then we have inspecting and testing cost. All right, we incurred cost with regards to inspecting and testing. Now we want to allocate those costs to different products. How are we going to allocate that? We can allocate based on number of tests, all right, that we have. Then we have painting cost, right? We want to allocate the painting cost to the different products. Probably we did paint the products, all right? How are we going to allocate that? We can allocate based on the number of direct labor hours consumed during the painting. So per each product, all right, or per each division. All right. So that's how we go about it in regards to activity-based costing. So what's crucial, all right, under activity-based costing is to identify a cost driver for each cost. That's what's important, all right? Activity-based costing. So your task or your challenge is identify cost drivers for each indirect cost. That's what you need to pay attention to. When you talk about activity-based costing, your mindset should be focused now to say, okay, so we are using activity-based costing, all right? So you find that, okay, we have electricity, all right, that we have. We want to identify what drives electricity, all right? You have rent, all right? So you have total rent cost, all right? Now you want to identify now, how are you going to allocate the rent to different products or division, all right? So we want to allocate rent to different products. What can be the basis that we can use to allocate rent? We can agree now there's rent. We can allocate rent to different products based on floor space occupied, right? Size of floor space occupied. We can use that as our driver. So that means now this is our cost driver, all right? That's what we use to allocate the rent to the different products. Right, crucial, important. So when you're dealing with activity-based costing, the most important principle is to identify your cost drivers. Right, it becomes a bit subjective, all right, with regards to the drivers that we have in terms of activity-based costing. But it's crucially important that we have detailed understanding how we're going to go about it. We have type of cost drivers, all right? We have transaction drivers. These are driven by the number of times a particular action is undertaken. All right. So we have these ones that we call transaction drivers. All right. For example, purchasing. All right. Purchasing, the cost associated with purchasing of items. We can agree now, this is a transaction driver. Purchasing is a transaction. Now, what will be the driver? We can agree now purchasing could be driven by the number of purchase orders placed. That will be the driver that we can have there. Then we have what we call duration drivers. So duration drivers, this is the length of time it takes to perform the action. All right? For example, setting up time. Now, you guys, Some of you guys love baking, as an example. Now, let's say you want to bake muffins. The time it takes for you to switch on the oven, right? Then the muffins gets heated and then up until they ripe to whatever you want. Now, do you guys agree with me? Now, the driver for the electricity consumed during the baking of muffins, the driver there could be the number of hours spent during heating of the muffins. So the driver to the muffins could be the number of hours or the time. Then we have intensity drivers. All right. In regards to this, we're looking at it to say what resources were used. All right. Intensity drivers. What resources were actually used. All right. I don't know if there's anyone who feels lost so far to say, hey, I don't understand what you're talking about. It's more or less like you're speaking a different language. Is there anyone who's lost so far before I proceed? Same page. Okay, cool. Let's proceed and see what's happening there. All right. So in terms of the next part, all right, please explain intensity drivers. Intensity drivers. So this one we said, no, we're looking at the resources that were used. Come back here. All right. In regards to this, intensity drivers, we can have things like, for example, assembly cost. All right. So you incurred assembly cost. All right. Remember to assemble, maybe, for example, a car. You incurred assembling cost. All right. You paid labor, there's electricity involved, and all those kind of costs. How are you going to allocate these costs? Assembly cost is a very good example of intensity cost. Now you're allocating based on the resources used. So the number of parts that you actually used to assemble. That's what we call intensity drive, an example of intensity drive. All right. And then, are you answered, ma'am? Cool. And then we're looking at step one. We want to identify the different activities. All right. So we want to identify the major activities in a process which leads to cost being incurred. Right? So 4 types of activity. We have unit level activities. So these activities, they're volume based. All right. So in other words, that we have direct material, labor, variable overheads. So these ones can be traced directly to products. These ones we don't worry about. All right. 4 types of activities. These ones, there is no need to stress. Why? Direct material, they're volume based. Direct labor. All right. Variable manufacturing overheads. There's no issues with these ones. Remember, we want to allocate these to products. Different products. How do we allocate these costs? We can take cost per unit, just multiply by volume produced. So these ones are easy. When you have variable cost, there's no issues in terms of the allocation of variable cost to different products. So just take the cost per unit. What is the cost per unit of direct labor? What is the cost per unit of direct material? What is the cost per unit of direct manufacturing overheads? Multiplied by, it can be volume produced or volume consumed. That's what will give you your total cost. Right? This one is easy. These ones are quite easy. The ones that are volume driven, the unit level, no issues. Then we have batch level. Batch level is performed each time a batch is produced. It varies per volume of batches produced, not per individual item. Now, like for example, when you talk about batches, Think about the making of bread. We can agree now that Sascom, when they're making bread, they put them in different batches. They have different pens, all right, that they use. And each pen probably can produce, maybe let's say it produces 5,000 loaves of bread. All right? So they make bread. Now, one batch of bread, or one batch of making bread is made up of 5,000 loaves of bread. What are we saying here? We're saying in one go, all right, when Sascom, in regards to this, when they're making bread, all right, they just put 5,000 loaves once in an oven. Then it comes out in batches. So they have 5,000 loaves coming out in one batch. All right. So we're saying one batch is equal to 5,000 loaves. That's one batch. So this is what we are looking at in regards to batch level. So we are saying some cost or the activities is driven by the number of batches that we have. We're going to look at that part just now. All right, or maybe on Saturday, depending with time. Then we can move on to product sustaining. All right, what is product sustaining? We're saying, no, it supports the different products manufactured. That is, cost for producing a bill of material. All right, designing of new product or research and development are allocated to products as overheads. All right, then we have facility sustaining, performed to sustain a factory's general manufacturing process, plant management, and security. All right. Generally, these ones are not allocated to products directly. All right. That's what we have as facility sustaining. All right. Let's look at identifying the cost driver of each activities. All right. Cost drivers must be measurable. All right. So the first thing, remember now, we proportion. All right. We proportionate the indirect overheads. We proportionate them to the based on the different cost drivers. All right, we proportionate them to the based on the different cost drivers. So that's what we use when you're allocating them to the different products. Now, cost drivers must be measurable and must be able to be allocated to products. So in other words, they should be in number form. A direct relationship must exist between the cost driver and the activity. All right, so we need a direct relationship. For example, activity cost. So maybe we have a cost. We have 10,000 for setup. We spend 10,000 to set up. What is the cost driver for setup? We can agree we can use the number of setup. Right? Ordering cost. What could be the cost driver for ordering cost? Anyone, guys? What can we use as the cost driver for ordering? Anyone, guys? What can drive this? Number of orders, right? Right, perfect. And then material handling. What can drive a material handling cost? What can we use as a driver for material handling? What can we have? Material handling. Anyone, guys?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Insurance cost?
insurance cost.
Yes.
Okay. But now, remember, we have a cost for material handling. All right? We want to allocate this cost to different products. What can we use as our base to allocate this? If we say insurance cost, the problem with insurance cost is this is now another insurance. You see, so we can't use a cost to allocate another cost. Quantity, material handling, probably. So in terms of quantity, you're looking at the quantity of material consumed. That's fine. All right?
Okay.
What about, all right.
Okay.
All right, cool. What about maintenance? What can drive maintenance? We can use,
Machine
come again?
hours. Machine hours.
Machine hours. Okay, that's fine. All right. What about the number of breakdowns? You can use that, right? As our cost driver. All right. Remember maintenance. Maintenance, we want to allocate maintenance to different products. So we get the fair basis would be say, product one, how many times did it break down? Product two, how many times did it break down? So we're going to allocate, so we have a total cost of maintenance of 10,000. Right? Think of it this way. This is what's happening, guys. ABC is not difficult. We have maintenance cost of 50,000. All right. We want to allocate this cost to product A or to machine A and machine B. We want to allocate this cost to machine A and to machine B. Now, machine A had 4 breakdowns. All right. Machine B had 6 breakdowns. How are you going to allocate the maintenance cost? The first thing, the cost driver in regards to this is going to be what? So the cost driver, we're saying no, it's number of breakdowns. So what is a cost driver? We are saying the factor that can increase the maintenance cost. What can increase this maintenance cost? We can agree the maintenance cost can be increased by number of breakdowns. So in other words, we're saying a machine that had more breakdown should have more maintenance cost. A machine that has less breakdown should have less maintenance cost. So to allocate this, so machine A, based on ABC, we calculate the number of breakdowns. So we have 4 plus 6, it gives us 10. So take 4 divided by 4 plus 6. All right? Then we multiply with 50,000. So then give us now 4 out of 10 times 50,000. Take us to 20,000. Then we have machine B. So machine B, want to allocate this cost. We're going to say over 6 plus 4 times 50,000. So it's going to take us to 6 over 10 times 50,000. Take us to 30,000. That's how ABC is. Is it understandable, guys? Good. Now, let's proceed. Now, want to create, all right, in regards to this, create cost pools. All right, so collect the cost associated with each cost driver. So in regards to this, the cost pool that we have now, we are looking at, in this case, what will be the cost pool? The cost pool now that we have is maintenance cost, just as an example. So we are saying the cost pool, remember we've identified the drivers. All right, the cost pool now are those indirect costs that we have. All right, so the Collect the cost associated with each cost driver in a cost pool. Only one cost driver per cost pool is allowed. Bear the following in mind. The activity cost must be material to justify separate treatment. All right? The cost driver should be identified as the most suitable for the cost pool. Trace the activity cost to cost object. All right? So in regards to this, so rate is equal to activity cost divided by driver volume. All right, let's look. This example might take long. All right, I'm not going to do this, so let's do it on Saturday. All right, during the Saturday class. So let's now look at theory behind AB. So you can attempt this question, all right? Yeah, but of course I'm going to explain it more during Saturday because it's a bit longer, all right? I don't want the situation whereby we look at an example, then we didn't complete it, then we start in the middle of it in another class, all right? ABC, all right? Relevance of ABC. Now, what you want you guys to understand, there are two things that you need to know about ABC. All right? What is expected of us in regards to ABC system? Now, one, you are required to understand advantages and disadvantages of ABC system. They can examine you that. Two, differences between ABC and traditional costing system. All right, this is what they examine. Three, the calculation and ABC, which is allocation of overheads. And the ABC system. That's what we are looking at. Now, in terms of this, ABC is time-consuming and expensive. We can agree that when we did absorption costing, we didn't do this whole lot of allocation of fixed cost. It was quicker compared to ABC to allocate the fixed cost. We can agree, and absorption costing, we just took the budgeted fixed cost divided by budgeted production, then multiply by actual units produced. That's how we allocate the fixed cost. You remember that we didn't say identify the cost drivers, then we allocate the based on the cost drivers and all that. We never did that. So it was quicker there, unlike ABC. So ABC is time consuming, all right? Time consuming compared to traditional costing. All right. Introduce when indirect costs are high relative to direct cost. So in other words, ABC is more usable where indirect costs are high relative to direct costs. Remember, we mentioned earlier on that in the modern world, there's more indirect costs. We're using robots. All right, we're saying labor cost is going down. All right, there's more cost coming from the usage of robots to do production and computers. All right, or machinery. So there's lesser labor cost compared to the old system. Product or services are complex, all right, in regards to this, and then product or services are tailored to customer specifications, all right. In regards to this, in the modern world, you can give specifications of what you want. And like back then, they just say, no, we're selling chairs. Here's the chairs. But these days, you can actually go and say, no, I want a chair that's slanting like this and this and that. They can do it for you. But back then, they couldn't do that because there was no machinery to do that. All right. Some products are sold in large numbers, but others in small numbers. So this is what you need to know. Advantages of ABC: improved accuracy, better cost understanding, fair allocation of cost, better cost control, can be used in complex situations, can be applied beyond production, can be used in service industry. Disadvantage: not always relevant. Still need arbitrary allocations. So that we did the allocations there. need to choose appropriate drivers and activities, which can be subjective. It's complex, expenses to operate. Now, implications of switching to ABC. Pricing can be based on more realistic data. Sales strategy can be more soundly based. Decision-making can be improved. Performance management can be improved under ABC. Right. Going to look at these examples also on Saturday class. Right. Now, MSc is a difficult. He says, winners are not people who never fail, but people who never quit. I know some of you guys are reporting this measure, but remember, winners are not people who never fail, but who never quit. Some of you are going to be failing some of the tests, but you continue fighting up until you make it to the final. That's what's important. Do not give up, continue pushing until you get it. All right. Questions, guys? No questions. Okay, if there are no questions, I'll see you guys on Saturday. Bye, guys.